Hello everyone and welcome to my video lecture series. Okay, so we have started with plant growth hormones or phytohormones, and we had started with growth regulators, and in that we had completed with auxins in our last lecture. So today we will continue that and we'll start with the second hormone, which is called as gibberellins. And before I start with the topic, for all those who are viewing this video and who have yet not subscribed to my channel, please kindly do so if this channel is helping you. Okay, do put a like if you like my videos and do share them with your friends. Okay, so anyways, beginning with today's topic, which is gibberellins. Okay, so yeah, so while writing down gibberellins, please make sure that you get the spelling right, because many people don't write the spelling correctly. There is a double B and there is a double L in the spelling. Okay, so let us start with the second type of hormones, which are growth regulators, which are called as gibberellins. All right, now gibberellins, just like auxins, also they promote growth. Okay, but there is a slight difference between gibberellins and auxin, and that is in a way that auxins normally cause both the stem and root to grow. Okay, whereas gibberellins generally mostly cause only stem growth. Okay, it does not cause root growth to that extent. So that is one of the differences. Okay, so it promotes mainly growth of the stem. The other difference between gibberellins and auxins is that, if you remember, I told you in yesterday's lecture that auxins basically show polar transport or basipetal transport, that is transport which is occurring only in one direction, from top to the bottom, correct? Whereas gibberellins show non-polar transport, so it is a bi-directional transport, so it can occur from top to bottom or from bottom to top. Please remember that. Okay, so let me write down over here the points which we have just discussed. Okay, now where are gibberellins found? So gibberellins are normally found in young leaves, young roots, okay, young stem. They are found in seeds, but most abundant quantity, okay, the quantity wise, mostly they are found in large numbers in the root tip and the seed. Okay, in general they are found everywhere in the younger parts of the plant, but most abundant they are present in the root tip and the seed. So I will write down over here. Okay, so they are found in young leaves, okay, then young stem, young root, seeds, whereas mostly or abundantly they are present in the root tip and seeds. So I will write down over here abundant. Is this clear? Okay, next let me write down the type of transport. So it's a very important point. They show non-polar transport. Please remember this. Okay, the meaning of non-polar transport is that they are bi-directional in transportation. Is this clear? Now let us study the history of gibberellins. Okay, how were gibberellins discovered, who discovered them, okay, where are they coming from? So coming to the history part, gibberellins were basically discovered by a Japanese scientist called as Kurosawa. Okay, so what I will do is I will write down his name over here so that it becomes easy. Okay, so the person who discovered them was called as Kurosawa. Okay, Kurosawa was a Japanese scientist and he discovered these gibberellins in the year 1926. Okay, so how did Kurosawa discover gibberellins? So the thing is, he observed that a certain kind of a fungus, okay, I will tell you the name of that fungus later on, a certain fungus which basically infects the rice plants. So what happens is, when the fungus infects that rice plant, there is a disease which occurs in the rice plant which is called as Backen's disease. Okay, I will write that down later on. So what happens in this Backen's disease is, the length of the stem increases quite a bit. Okay, so basically in that fungal disease, the length of the stem of the rice increases a lot, and that is called as Backen's disease. And later on, Kurosawa found out that the chemical substance is present in the fungus which are causing the length of the stem to increase. Okay, these chemical substances are the same as gibberellins. Okay, however, please remember, Kurosawa did not coin the word gibberellins. He did not find the word, or he did not discover the word gibberellins. However, he knew that these substances are responsible for elongation of the stem in Bacon's disease. Okay, later on, two more scientists in 1938, okay, they basically discovered and they crystallized these chemicals from the fungus, and then later on these two scientists gave the chemicals the term gibberellins. Okay, so let me write it down. So I have written down the name of the scientist. Okay, Kurosawa, 1926. You have to remember that the fungus, now I will write down the name of the fungus. See, the name of the fungus is very similar to the word, to the name of the hormone. The hormones are called gibberellins. Name of the fungus is Gibberella fujicuroi. Okay, I will write down the name of the fungus over here. Okay, the fungus is called, so the spelling will be similar, double Berella, Gibberella, and fujicuroi. This is the name of the fungus. It is a scientific word, so please underline it. This is the fungus. Okay, and what this fungus does is, this fungus infects which plants? It infects rice plants. Okay, and what does it do is, when it infects the rice plants, it causes an increase in stem, and that increase in stem, that is a characteristic of the disease. And the name of the disease, I'm going to use a different color over here. The disease is called as Bacon's disease. Please remember this. Okay, so in Bacon's disease, what happens is, the length of the stem increases abnormally. It becomes very, very long. Which stem? The rice stem. And this increase in length of the stem is caused by chemicals which are inside this Gibberella fujicuroi fungus, and these chemicals were subsequently called as gibberellins, but Kurosawa did not discover the word gibberellins. Is this clear? So all these happened in 1926. Later on in 1938, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take the space over here. In 1938, the two scientists, I will write down their name, Yabuta and Sumiki. Okay, so see, it is not very important for you to remember the names. However, if you are giving an entrance exam, there is a chance that such questions might be asked. So in 1938, Yabuta and Sumiki, they basically crystallized these chemical components present in Gibberella fujicuroi, which were responsible for elongation of stem of the rice, and they called these chemicals, and which were crystallized, they called them as gibberellins. So these two discovered the word gibberellins. Please remember this, it's very, very important. Okay, so who discovered gibberellins? Who discovered the term gibberellins? Yabuta and Sumiki. But who was the first person to discover gibberellins? It was, yes, Kurosawa. Is this clear? The word gibberellins is coined by Yabuta and Sumiki. However, it was first discovered by Kurosawa. Clear? So what are the important things for you to remember over here? The important things are, first of all, you have to know that the name of the person who discovered them, then the name of the fungus, very, very important to remember this, Gibberella fujicuroi. Okay, please don't make spelling mistakes. In Gibberella or gibberellins, double B and double L are present. Infection of the rice plants, which is called as Bacon disease, and in this disease the stem elongates considerably. That elongation is done by gibberellins, coined by two people, Yabuta and Sumiki. Is this clear? Okay, so we have studied about the history, how the gibberellins were found out. We have studied what they are responsible in. They are basically growth hormones. They mostly help in growth of the stem compared to the root. Okay, I have also told you where they are present. They are present in all the young parts, but mostly they are present in root tips and seeds, and they show non-polar transport, that is bidirectional transport. Now let us come and have a look at the chemical structure. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to just scroll down a bit. Okay, and what we are going to do is we are going to see the chemical structure. Now chemically, if you see, the gibberellins are basically derivatives of an acid which is called as mevalonic acid. So what I will do is I will write it down over here. Okay, there is an acid, sorry, which is called as mevalonic acid. Okay, now this mevalonic acid, you don't have to remember the structure and all. I am going to tell you the structure just as an extra information. However, you don't have that in the book. In the book it is just given that mevalonic acid, okay, is basically giving rise to gibberellin. So structure of gibberellins and mevalonic acid is not the same. Mevalonic acid is a derivative. It is gibberellins are derivatives of mevalonic acid, so they are obtained from mevalonic acid. Now for all those who want extra information, okay, mevalonic acid is basically an acid which has the molecular formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down over here. Okay, let me just scroll down. Mevalonic acid is having the molecular formula C6H14O4. This is extra information, okay. And the structure, if you see, the structure is something like this. Okay, and then you have a hydroxyl group over here. Similarly, you have a hydroxyl group over here. Okay, then over here you have a hydroxyl group and another group which is the alkyl group, which is methyl group. Okay, and okay, so let me do one thing. I don't have much space over here. I will do this. There is methyl group over here and there is a double bonded O. So this is the structure of mevalonic acid. Okay, the molecular formula is C6H14O. It is not there in the book. You don't need to remember this, or this is only for those people who are very much interested in knowing the structures of compounds. So this is mevalonic acid, and from this mevalonic acid, what are formed are the gibberellins are formed. Okay, now gibberellins are also called as gibberellic acids. So what I will do is I'm going to rub this off. Okay, the gibberellins are also called as gibberellic acids. Please remember, that is why the short form is GA. In yesterday's lecture I told you cytokinins are CK. So GA stands for gibberellic acid. Why is it acidic? Because it is made from mevalonic acid, so it is acidic. Okay, so that is GA. So more than 150 types of gibberellic acids are found. Okay, all of them are derivatives of mevalonic acid, and more than 150 types of gibberellins are found. However, from all those types, the most common type of gibberellin which is present is called as GA3. So I'm going to write it down over here. GA3 is the most common and biologically important gibberellin. Is this clear? Okay, so everybody has to remember this, that out of more than those 150 types of gibberellins, the most common and the most biologically important type of gibberellin is GA3, which is gibberellic acid 3. It is a derivative of mevalonic acid. Now coming to the structure of gibberellins. Okay, we have studied the structure of mevalonic acid, and gibberellins are derivatives of mevalonic acid. So gibberellic acids or gibberellins are basically ring structures. Okay, and the ring which is present, that ring is called as a gibbane ring. GIBBANE. So in the state board textbook, the spelling of this gibbane is wrong. They have added an E somewhere over here. So the ring is called as a gibbane ring. And what is a gibbane ring? A gibbane ring is made up of 4 circular rings. Okay, and these rings are called as isoprene units. Okay, so there are basically, see, what is the meaning of isoprene? Isoprene ring is a cyclic ring which is having 5 carbon compounds. Please remember. Okay, so basically there are 4 such isoprene rings present, and together those 4 rings are fused together, and that entire structure which is formed, that is called as a gibbane ring, and that is the structure of gibberellins or gibberellic acid. So you just have to remember that gibberellins are made up of a gibbon ring, and each gibbon ring has at least 4 isoprene units. What is isoprene? Isoprene unit is a unit having 5 carbon atoms. Now they have not given the definition of isoprene in your book, they have just given that isoprene units are present. Okay, now again I have added the structure of gibberellins for your information. You don't have to remember that, it is just extra. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to scroll over here and I'm going to show you the structure. So if you can see over here, I have added this structure. So this is the structure of gibberellins or gibberellic acid. You don't have to remember it. Is this clear? And this is a derivative of mevalonic acid. Okay, so let us go back to what we were doing earlier. All right. Okay, so with that we have finished with the chemical structure of gibberellins. I hope everything that I have done till now is clear. Okay, so let us just go and revise whatever we have studied up till now about gibberellins. So going to the top again, gibberellins are basically growth hormones, correct? These are growth hormones which are like auxins, however they are slightly different from auxins. In which way? That normally they cause the growth of stem, okay, not the root, whereas auxins cause both the stem and root to grow. The second difference is gibberellins are transported in the plants via non-polar transport, whereas in the case of auxins I told you polar transport or basipetal transport. Is that clear? Next we have to study where are these gibberellins normally found. So they are normally found in young seeds, young leaves, young roots, okay, and young stems. However, abundantly or quantity wise, majorly they are found in root tips and seeds. Okay, then we come to the history. Okay, coming to the history of gibberellins, please remember the person who discovered them, who did not term the word gibberellins, but the person who discovered them, he was a Japanese scientist called Kurosawa. He discovered them in 1926. How did he discover them? So he saw that a fungus, which fungus? Gibberella fujicuroi. When that fungus infects a rice plant, what happens is it causes a disease called as Bacchane's disease. And what happens in Bacchane's disease is the length of the stem elongates considerably. Okay, so the plant becomes very tall, and he realized that this elongation in length of the rice stems is occurring because of these certain chemicals which are present in Gibberella fujicuroi. He did not know the term gibberellins at that time. Then what happened in 1938, two scientists came. Who were there? Yabuta and Sumiki. So Yabuta and Sumiki in 1938 they crystallized these chemicals from Gibberella fujicuroi, and then they called these chemicals as gibberellins. So gibberellins can be synthesized from Gibberella fujicuroi also, and gibberellins are also naturally present in the plants. Please remember this. That is why they are also called as plant hormones. Okay, they are growth promoters. Please remember, you remember growth promoter, growth inhibitors. Inhibitors stop the growth, promoters promote growth, okay, or they start the growth. So we studied about that. Then we studied about the structure. So basically gibberellins or gibberellic acids are derivatives of an acid called as mevalonic acid. You just have to remember that. I have given you the extra information, molecular formula C6H14O4, don't need to remember that. Then the structure of a gibberellin is basically made up of 4 isoprene rings, okay, and all those isoprene rings joined together, they form a structure which is called as a gibbon ring. Please remember that. Okay, so that I have given over here. So I hope this part is clear. Okay, so with that we have completed about the introduction, about the history, and about the chemical structure of gibberellins. Now the next part, like we did in auxins, is we have to study their physiological effects on plants and their applications, and after that the part of gibberellins will be done. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just scroll this slightly down, and I'm going to rub this off. Okay, So I hope everything is clear up to now. So I am just teaching one hormone per lecture because I can easily take two hormones per lecture, but then it will become much more confusing because already this part is very theoretical. So if you study one hormone per lecture and if you understand that, it becomes easier for you to remember all the applications, their physiological properties, etc. So let me write down the heading over here. Okay, so the heading is going to be physiological effects physiological effects and applications of gibberellins. Okay, so again what I'm going to do is, there are a number of applications and physiological effects. I'm just going to write all of them down before I explain them. Okay, and once I have written all of them down, I will explain because I don't want to forget any of them. Okay, so let me start. The first thing that I will write down is it helps in breaking the dormancy of bud. Okay, I will explain all these points later on. Okay, then the second physiological property is the gibberellins, they promote seed germination. Okay, extremely sorry for that. Okay, then the third point is going to be they promote stem elongation. Then they cause something which is called as bolting in rosette plants. I'm going to explain all these points to you, so don't worry about that. Okay, then they also cause parthenocarpy, just like auxins. So I hope everybody remembers what is the meaning of parthenocarpy. I have already explained that to you in the previous lecture. Okay, then they cause flowering in long day plants. Okay, and next point is going to be they increase fruit size. Okay, example in the case of grapes. Then genetically dwarf plants become tall when gibberellins are used. So see, most of the applications which I am writing down, they are self-explanatory. Even when I'm writing that down, you will be able to understand what they mean. Okay, but I'm going to explain all of them, don't worry. So yeah, so they also help in making the genetically dwarf plants become tall. For example, maize is a very good example. Then a very important point is that there is no need for vernalization. Okay, what is vernalization? I will explain that to you. Okay, then going further down, there's no need of vernalization. Then they inhibit, extremely sorry, root growth. They also help in delaying senescence. I hope you remember this word. And delay formation of abscission layer. I hope you remember this word too. Abscission layer. And I think the last part is they cause male flowers to grow on female plants. Alright, so I've written down all the applications and physiological effects of the gibberellins. Okay, So let us just go through them and I will explain each one of them. So coming to the first point, okay, so they help in breaking dormancy of bud. Now what is a bud? So once again please pay attention over here. So if suppose this is a stem that I draw, okay, this is a stem. So when the stem is newly formed, there are small outgrowths called as buds which are there, okay, and later on these buds give rise to branches, they give rise to stem, or they give rise to leaves, okay. So these buds will then grow in size and give rise to other shoots from the stem. So first thing is that these buds basically grow only when favorable conditions are present. Just like a seed, the buds which are present on the stem, they will grow only when the external conditions are favorable for the plant to grow. However, even in unfavorable conditions, if you take gibberellins and if you add them to the soil, okay, or if you use a foliar spray and put that spray having gibberellins on leaves, then that will break the dormancy of the buds and the buds will begin to grow. So basically, even in unfavorable conditions, you can break the resting phase of the bud and you can give it directions or give it a message to grow. That is the first point. Second is promote seed germination. You know what seed germination is. Same thing, just like dormancy of bud, even the seeds can be dormant, and until favorable conditions have reached, the seed will not germinate. However, if you add gibberellins, then these seeds will germinate quickly, so they help in seed germination. So that is another important point, okay. Then third is promote stem elongation. You know this, they basically help in growth of the stem. Now how does this stem elongation occur? That is very important. So oh, I shouldn't have rubbed that diagram. So anyway, again over here, if you see, or I will do one thing, I will just yeah, so if this is your stem, correct, and if this is one bud which has grown, this is another bud which has grown, this is another bud which has grown, then please remember these buds from where these other parts grow, okay. So this is the original bud, this is the original bud, this is the original bud. These buds are also called as nodes. So these areas where these buds are present, these are called as nodes. Also remember the bud which is present at the top, that is called as apical bud. Apical bud is towards the apex or towards the top, and these buds which are present sideways, they are called as axillary buds, or they are also called as lateral buds. Now where these buds are present, these areas on the stems are called as nodes, okay. So this is a node, similarly this area is a node, similarly this area is a node. So you have these nodes which are present on the stem, okay. So again, if you want to see that over here, okay, so if you see over here, these nodes are present and the area between the nodes, so I will just shade them. This yellow colored area which I am shading, this is the area between these two nodes. Similarly, this is the area between these two nodes, this is the area between these two nodes. These areas are called as internodes. Okay, and these internodes are basically the areas present between two nodes or areas present between two buds. So what happens is, when you add gibberellins, gibberellins cause the internodes to increase in length, and when the internodes increase in length, obviously the height of the stem will increase. Is this clear? So I hope all these things are clear. I hope what are buds, they are clear. So a stem which is growing branches, those branches will grow from buds, and buds are present in areas called as nodes. The area between two nodes, that is called internode, and these internodes basically grow in length because of gibberellins, and that is why the entire length of the stem increases. So I hope that is clear. So that is the next point which I wanted to explain. All right, okay, so that is stem elongation. Next is they help in bolting in rosette plants. Now bolting is also elongation of the internodes. However, bolting is a process in which before flowering the internodes increase in length, and when flowering begins the internodes do not extend in length. Okay, so normally during stem elongation, the internodes keep on growing throughout life. However, in case of rosette plants, what are rosette plants? Rosette plants are the plants which have overlapping leaves which appear like a rose. For example, if you have seen cabbage, the leaves of the cabbage plant, okay, the cabbage that we eat, they are overlapping. Okay, and if you see from above and if you cut it, then it will look like the petals of the rose are overlapping each other. Such plants were having overlapping leaves in a circular fashion. They are called rosette plants. So in rosette plants, before the flowering occurs, okay, before that the elongation of internodes occurs, and as soon as the flowering starts, the elongation stops. This process is called as bolting. So elongation of internodes till the flowering begins in rosette plants is called as bolting. So I hope that is clear. So I will just underline the word over here. Okay, that is called as bolting. Okay, next is called they cause parthenocarpy. Parthenocarpy is seeds are not formed, so seedless fruits can be formed. So that is an important application, just like auxine. So I will underline that. Okay, next is they cause flowering in long day plants. What are long day plants? Long day plants are the plants which require more sunlight compared to other plants. Okay, there are two kinds of plants: short day plants, long day plants. Short day plants are the plants which require less hours of sunlight. Long day plants are the plants which require more hours of sunlight. That's why long day. So in certain long day plants, if you want to hasten the process of flowering, if you want to quicken that process, you can add gibberellins. They will begin to flower. So that is, they cause flowering in long day plants. So I'm going to underline those words. Next we come to they increase the fruit size. So nowadays if you see the grapes, most of the grapes that you get, they are huge in size. Okay, earlier if you see 8 to 9 years back, if you have seen the size of the grapes, they were much smaller. But nowadays, because of these growth hormones which are produced artificially, they're synthesized, the size of the grapes has become huge. So these bigger sized grapes are obtained by using gibberellins. This is one of the very important applications of gibberellins. They are used for increasing fruit size, especially in the case of grapes. So very important point. Okay, next is if you have got genetically dwarf plants. So I hope everybody knows genetically dwarf plants are the plants which have genes which have the recessive genes. Okay, so if you have a genetically dwarf plant and if you add gibberellins to that plant, then it will become as tall as a proper tall plant. Okay, best example is maize. So if you have a genetically dwarf variety of maize and if you add gibberellins while it is still growing, then it will become as tall as the regular tall plant. Okay, so it will also increase. Again, it is increasing the length of the internode, so it is increasing the length of the stem. So most of the points are based on increasing in height. Okay, so they become tall. Next point is no need of vernalization. Now this term I think most of you must be hearing for the first time. What is the meaning of the word vernalization? So see, what is vernalization? In colder countries, okay, in countries which are having a very cold season, what happens is during the cold season the plant doesn't grow much, and as soon as the cold season ends, there is a time or season which is called as spring, where the plants bloom, the flowers bloom, and the plants grow well. Okay, so what happens is the plants are somehow used to that mechanism that after an extreme cold spell or after an extreme cold season, after that they will grow much better. So vernalization is an artificial technique in which you put the plants in artificial cold conditions. Okay, so what happens is the mechanism in the plants is that, okay, there is winter outside, so after some time there will be spring, so the plant readies itself to grow. So artificially putting the plant in extreme cold conditions so that after some time they will be more productive, that is called as vernalization. It is based on the concept where plants are growing in cold climate, and after the cold climate spring occurs where the plants are in full bloom or they grow well. So vernalization is that. Okay, so normally you don't need to use vernalization technique to grow plants. If you use gibberellins, they will help the plant to grow very well. So you don't need to use artificial cold methods. Is this clear? Next is usage of gibberellins inhibits root growth. Okay, so I told you it only helps in growth of stem. Okay, it doesn't help in growth of root, so it inhibits or stops root growth. Next point is it helps in delaying of senescence and abscission layer. So what is senescence? I have already told you this. Senescence means aging. Okay, aging or dying of the plant is called senescence. And what is the meaning of abscission layer? That is the layer which becomes weak and it falls off from the plant. Yesterday I had given you the example of leaves becoming yellow and falling off. That layer is called abscission layer. So abscission layer will occur when senescence is occurring. So both senescence and abscission layer formation is delayed, so it is just working like auxins. It is promoting the growth and it is inhibiting the aging or the death process. Okay, and last is by using gibberellins you can grow male flowers on female plants. So that is an interesting application. Even if you have a female plant, okay, a female plant is a plant which is only having female flowers. Female flowers are the flowers having a gynoecium only. However, if you use gibberellins in proper quantities, you can even cause male flowers to grow on these plants. Is this clear? So with that we have finished the physiological effects and applications of gibberellins. Okay, so it is not very difficult to remember the applications. Please remember, most of the applications are based on increasing the length of the plant. Okay, it doesn't affect the growth of the root. Okay, some of the common applications between gibberellins and auxins are they help in parthenocarpy, right? Then they delay the senescence and they delay the formation of the abscission layer. They help in the stem to grow. So these are some of the common properties which are present. Also they are helpful in increasing the fruit size. You can make the genetically dwarf plants into tall plants. It is not going to change the genetic makeup of the plant. Please remember, so when I say that a genetically dwarf maize is pleasant, and when I add gibberellins, it is not going to change the genes. Only the phenotype will be changed, not the genotype. Please remember that. Okay, so the next plants which grow, the next generation or the next progeny, it is not going to have a change in its genotype because of addition of gibberellins. It is just a external change or the phenotypic change. Okay, so these are the applications which we have done today. Okay, and just like auxins, they also help in breakage of dormancy and they promote seed germination. So like the auxin, gibberellins are very useful phytohormones or plant hormones or growth promoters or growth inducers which can be used in agricultural techniques, and they can be used in many economical methods. Is this clear? Okay, and with that we have finished our today's topic. So please remember the name of the fungus from where gibberellins have been isolated. Okay, Gibberella fujiculae. The name of the disease which affects the rice plants, okay, which was seen by Kurosawa. Okay, name of the disease is Bakan's disease, Bakanes. Okay, then remember, chemically it is a derivative of malonic acid. Okay, and gibberellins themselves are made from isoprene rings. Those 4 isoprene rings together are called as gibbon rings. All right, gibbon ring. Then next, more than 150 types of gibberellins are produced or formed. Out of them, the most common and biologically important gibberellin is gibberellic acid 3, Ga3. Gibberellic acid and gibberellins are the same thing. Then we came to physiological effects. Many effects we saw. Okay, so I think that's the end of gibberellins. In the next lecture that I'm going to upload tomorrow, we are going to learn about the last group of hormones which act as growth inducers, and they are called as cytokinins. And after that we are going to start with growth inhibitors, which are ethylene and abscisic acid. Okay, so that's it for today. Once again, I would like to remind you all, if you are not subscribed to my channel, do subscribe. If you like this lecture, put a like, do put in a comment. Okay, constructive criticism is always welcome, and do share my channel and all these videos with your friends. Thanks a lot.